Long before towering metropolises and sprawling civilizations, there existed the very first human cities, fragile clusters of clay and stone, built with hope and ingenuity. The streets bustled with early traders, children playing in the dust, and families tending to their humble homes. But in the distance, the sky darkened unnaturally, clouds gathering like a silent predator above. A storm unlike any before was approaching, carrying winds sharp enough to shred leaves from trees and rain heavy enough to drown entire streets. The air was thick with anticipation, an unspoken warning echoing through every alley and doorway. For the people of these fledgling cities, survival would soon become a question of instinct, courage, and sheer will. In the quiet before chaos, the world held its breath, and the first human cities were about to face a trial that would leave them forever changed. Before the sky turned menacing, life in the first human cities thrived with a fragile beauty. Families moved through narrow streets lined with mud brick homes, their walls adorned with simple carvings and colorful pottery. Marketplaces buzzed with trade, grains exchanged for handcrafted tools, fresh fruits for woven baskets. Children laughed as they chased each other through the sunlit squares, while elders shared knowledge of the seasons and the land. Humans had learned to tame rivers for irrigation, cultivate crops, and domesticate animals, marking the dawn of agriculture and community. Governance emerged in its earliest forms, with leaders mediating disputes and guiding collective efforts for survival. Yet, despite their ingenuity, these cities remained delicate islands of civilization, entirely vulnerable to the raw power of nature. A single storm could undo centuries of progress, leaving behind only whispers of what once was. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. The wind whispered differently that day, carrying a chill that had never been felt before. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, moving with a deliberate weight, as if the sky itself were preparing for judgment. Birds scattered in confusion, abandoning nests and perching on trembling branches. Rivers, usually steady and calm, surged against their banks, foreshadowing the fury to come. Farmers paused in their fields, sensing an unnatural pause in the rhythm of nature. Even the animals seemed to understand, a growing tension in the air warned that something monumental was approaching. For the first human cities, these early signs were a whisper of doom, a subtle prelude to a storm that would soon challenge the very survival of humanity. The sky darkened as if night had fallen in the middle of the day. Heavy clouds churned violently, crackling with the promise of lightning that split the heavens with deafening roars. The first drops of rain fell, cold and sharp, drumming on rooftops and streets, awakening a subtle panic among the inhabitants. Farmers ran to gather their livestock, children clutched their parents' hands, but most people could not yet comprehend the scale of the disaster approaching. Winds picked up, bending trees and tearing fragile structures from their foundations. Small streams overflowed, swallowing fields of crops that had taken months to cultivate. The first houses shivered under the onslaught, their walls groaning against the storm's wrath. In these moments, the city still thrived, yet the seed of destruction had already been sown, and nothing would remain untouched. As night fell, the storm showed its full fury. Roofs collapsed under the weight of relentless rain, while flickering fires, once the heartbeat of homes, were snuffed out by the deluge. Streets transformed into rivers, carrying debris and the desperate cries of those trapped. Families clung together, huddled beneath whatever shelter they could find, their faces pale with fear and exhaustion. Children whimpered, and the elderly shivered, unable to flee the unrelenting water and wind. Every step outside was a battle against nature itself, every breath a reminder of how small and fragile humanity truly was. Helplessness hung heavy in the air, as the storm tore through the first human cities, leaving chaos in its merciless path. The rain did not stop. Day after day, the downpour drowned the streets and fields, turning fertile land into muddy swamps. Rivers overflowed, swallowing crops and homes alike, while livestock floated helplessly, lost to the currents. Hunger gnawed at the people as their once plentiful stores of grain and meat vanished beneath the relentless floodwaters. The survivors began to understand the terrifying truth: this was not a temporary hardship, but a permanent reshaping of their world. The storm had destroyed more than homes, it had shattered the fragile stability of early civilization. Families scavenged for food, eyes wide with fear, hearts heavy with the knowledge that the cities they had built with so much effort might never rise again. When the storm finally eased, the world it left behind was unrecognizable. Streets, once filled with laughter and trade, were now rivers of mud and debris. Homes had collapsed under the weight of water and wind, leaving only skeletal frames and broken walls. Survivors wandered through the ruins, clutching each other for comfort, their faces etched with shock and grief. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the distant cries of those still searching for lost loved ones. Beyond the physical devastation, the climate had begun its cruel transformation. Seasons no longer followed their rhythm, crops failed, and a chill crept across the land. Civilization as they knew it had been broken, replaced by a harsher, unforgiving world. With their cities reduced to mud and rubble, the survivors had no choice but to leave. Families gathered what little they could carry, children clutched tightly, elders supported on makeshift stretchers, and set out across unfamiliar terrain. This was the first great migration of humanity, a desperate journey driven by necessity rather than choice. Each step was fraught with danger: swollen rivers, landslides, and the remnants of the storm's wrath challenged their every move. Yet, amid exhaustion and fear, a quiet determination burned within them. They were not merely fleeing destruction, they were carrying with them the fragile hope of survival, the seeds of a new beginning, and the enduring spirit of human resilience. As the weary travelers ventured farther from the ruins of their old cities, they began to discover pockets of safety, valleys sheltered from storms, rivers flowing with fresh water, and fertile soil that promised life. Slowly, they learned to read the land, to understand the rhythms of wind and rain, and to adapt their tools and methods for survival. Fire became a constant companion, not just for warmth but for cooking, protection, and signaling. Ingenious solutions emerged from necessity: makeshift shelters, rudimentary irrigation, and new ways to hunt and gather food. Every day tested their endurance, but each challenge also honed their skills, forging a generation capable of surviving, and even thriving, in a world that had once seemed determined to erase them. From the ashes of destruction, humans began to rebuild. Settlements rose on higher ground, carefully chosen to avoid the worst floods. Shelters were stronger, with improved drainage systems to channel away rainwater. Communities organized themselves with early forms of governance, sharing responsibilities for safety and resources. Every stone laid, every fire lit, carried the hard-earned lessons of survival. The memory of the storm shaped culture, teaching respect for nature's power and the importance of preparedness. Slowly, life returned, and the first human cities began to rise again, not merely as structures of wood and clay, but as monuments to resilience, hope, and the unyielding spirit of humankind. Today, the towering cities we inhabit are built upon the memories and lessons of those early survivors. Every brick, every street, every flowing river reminds us that civilization is fragile, easily challenged by the forces of nature. Yet, within that fragility lies humanity's greatest strength: resilience. The wisdom, courage, and perseverance of those who endured the storm live on in every generation. While nature remains indifferent and powerful, we carry forward the knowledge to endure, adapt, and rebuild. In the end, the story of survival is not only about destruction, it is about the enduring human spirit that refuses to surrender, no matter how fierce the storm. The storm that destroyed the first human cities was more than a moment of chaos, it was a turning point, a lesson written in mud, stone, and memory. From the ruins, humanity learned to endure, to adapt, and to respect the forces far greater than themselves. The cycles of nature continued, indifferent to human ambition, yet they also forged resilience, creativity, and the will to survive. Every flood, every drought, every fierce wind reminds us that our achievements are never permanent. And somewhere, beneath the calm of modern landscapes, the echoes of that ancient storm still whisper, a reminder of fragility, courage, and the unending struggle between humanity and the world it inhabits.